this is on me. My bad. Hey, what's up? What's up? Hey, what's up, everyone? Thank you so much for tuning to another episode of the Financial Griot, aka TFG. I'm one of three of the co-hosts, Atlanta Elson, and I'm joined by my other two lovely co-hosts. Literally, her name is Lovely. Here at the Financial Griot, we love to discuss our stories and just perspective of wealth building and making us hopefully into better people. So I am here. What is going on with you guys, LG?
Yeah, I thought you was going to go to Lovely at that point, but yes, my name is Lawrence Delva Gonzalez, and yeah, I'm throwing a little shade, a little, start off a little bit of violence right now in the conversation, but ultimately, I'm known on the interwebs as the neighborhood finance guy. I love to talk about that wealth journey as well, the stories that we have, and I just came off a beautiful trip with my wife to Portugal and Spain. Just kind of rub it into all you people struggling out here in these streets.
I was there in 2019, so you know.
I was there before then too. I'm just saying, 2019, I was there. I'm going back at some point. We was already under. It's not about that. It's not about me today. We do have a guest, so we're gonna get to our guest. But right before then, I'm gonna let the other co-host that's sometimes here, sometimes not, making the big bread, Lovely Meldelise.
Hey everyone, my name's Lovely. As I said, I'm super excited to be here. We have a great guest, and we're going to talk about some numbers, finances, thoughts on getting financial literacy and wealth. And I hope that you enjoy this particular episode. With that being said,
I'm gonna do what the professionals do. They read off the script about the person. So I'm gonna read it off a little bit. I stole this from somebody else's stuff or from your bio online. Dami, and I want you to actually enunciate your full entire name for the audience, because I think that's also good to get people more familiar with different names and how people say their name fully. But he goes by Dami for short, and sometimes he's known as Dami the CEO, but he's a young Christian entrepreneur. He currently runs a podcast called Wealth in Christ, and he also has a clothing brand that actually associates with it as well. Dami was born in Lagos, Nigeria, where he ate a lot of good jollof, but he migrated to the inner cities of Queen, New York at the age of 4. He grew up being known as the guy that's very passionate about Christ and business. So now he's on this journey to really kind of push that to the audience, the idea that you can actually have the best of both worlds. You can actually be a Christian, you can actually be very spiritual, very endowed with that, and morally correct, and also be in a position where you're kind of being a good steward of your own wealth, your own finances, so you can do more with it and ultimately change the world. I personally believe in the same thing, that money is not the root of all evils. I think having more people, more caring people, more good people with money will do more good for the world. So I'm going to pass it on to you, Dami. Let them know who you are. What's up? What's going on?
Thank you for the introduction, Lawrence, and thanks for having me here as well, Atlanta and Lovely. Like Lawrence said, I'm a young entrepreneur based here in Queens, New York. I've been on this journey for almost 2 or 3 years. My entrepreneurship journey goes back to when I was in high school, when I was in middle school, when I first started selling snacks. For those who may not know, like New York City lunch are not the best kind of lunch to have, and I was not a fan of it. And so my mom noticed that, so she would give me about like snacks, so it'd be like honey buns, when it was back at 50 cents. Now I know like they're like $1 and something, or brownies. So I would take them to school, where she'd buy like the pack of like cosmic brownies in a pack, like $1.99 back then. And I have 2 brothers, so we all like get two each. So I would take my 2 and go to school and sell it for like $1 or 50 cents to make some profit, and go and repeat that same process every time I get some type of snacks. It led to me selling my school lunch in middle school. Then when I got to high school, there was this guy, he was selling candy, and I was like, okay. He was selling candy, this is a cool idea. And the vending machine in my school had broke down. So I was like, what if I can just go to Dollar Tree or BJ's and start, bringing these different snacks, and make the money myself. So I started doing that my freshman year of high school. I did it all the way to my senior year of high school, middle of my senior year of high school. Through the journey, I had people invest. I had this one guy, where he would give me a certain amount of money, and I would use it to invest, and I would give him a certain dividends at the end of the week. I also had a structure where I had other people sell it for me, so it was not all about me. Then, so I'm not always gonna be available, because I also ran track while in high school, so it was like throughout the day, I know that money was being made, people were making money. I know who to go to for certain products, what client wanted this, what customer wanted this. So that was my very first taste of entrepreneurship. But like everything does come to an end. I did get suspended because it was, I guess, illegal to sell stuff in school. And I was very stubborn about it and not wanting to listen. So that led to my suspension. That almost at the same time kind of destruct my spirit as an entrepreneur. I didn't know it was an entrepreneur what I was doing back then, just to clarify. But it's just like, yeah, I'm not going to do anything in regards to business, because in real life, you're not going to get suspended. You're going to go to jail and all these lawsuits. Like, okay, so I went on to college, wanted to become a doctor. I was inspired by watching the Ben Carson documentary. I think the gift they hand was very like, oh, I could do something like this. A Black man who changed the world. I can be that same way if I can't do business. So I went on to do that, and it was just behind, like just like you mentioned in the introduction, I was always still interested in business, but I just didn't know how I could start it all over. I was only used to what I knew in high school. I didn't have no mentors. I didn't have anything. And anytime I asked people for it, it was like, they don't know. Because everybody was around was blue collar workers, teachers, lawyers. No one's necessarily an entrepreneur. Which led me in around 2019, early 2020. I was always been praying, like, God, if this is an opportunity for me to start a business, I'm like calling to start a business or be in the business world, like give me a sign or something. And came with the word wealth in Christ. Came with that, and from there I've been running since, been interviewing about 50 plus entrepreneurs from different backgrounds, teachers. So it's been an interesting journey so far.
Dope. I think I had that somewhat a similar experience with selling candy. Then one day my mom, I went back home. I had my whole supply, and she grabbed my whole supply and she tossed it to the trash. She said, "You're not doing it." And I think it was the same idea, or she heard from somebody else that you can get suspended. But ultimately, like that also crushed my spirits. I never even went back to selling. I was selling candy like it was dope. Selling candy, cards, Pokemon cards, basketball cards. I was that guy. So
we did it a little bit, but we ate all the food, so that's why the candy thing didn't last in our home. We were trying to be the candy lady place in the neighborhood, but we kept eating all the stuff.
Yeah, it sounds interesting that you had people investing and also paying out dividends. I'm like, man, I got really deep. Like, I really
yeah. Can you? I was just going to ask that. Can you explain that a little bit more specifically? So
about your illegal dealings,
illegal activity. Please do not do that at school. We just want to let our listeners know. Don't do that.
Some kid listening right now is like,
don't do that. We don't want you to get suspended. But no, Dami, can you please explain that? Like for example, they'll give you $20, right? And you will go and purchase the products that you need for the week. And how would, in terms of dividends, what percentage did you give them back from their initial hypothetical $20?
So like that, hypothetically, I got $20. It got me a lot of products. So, that $20 usually turns to maybe like $30 or $40, depending on the day. So I'll give them half. I think it was like half. So basically, we split the profit half. The other person gets 50%, and I would get the other 50%. And it will just be a weekly process. Next week you may give me 40, and I do the same thing. Regardless of how I sell or if I did not sell a product, the person always got his dividend at the end of the week. That was the agreement that we had. And it's funny that you mentioned that the students shouldn't do it, because once I graduated, the school kind of banned any type of selling of anything, whether it was candy boxes or chocolate bars. Like, they stopped it, because I was making money selling my own candy, and I was also selling out the school candy. So just like, I was just selling out everything, and they didn't want anybody to get inspired or think this is a new thing. So they stopped doing that once I graduated. And so they look for other ways to fundraise.
You know what? It's so messed up, and I hope educator or someone in professional education system higher up listen to this right now, because it's so messed up. Because that's a great opportunity to have entrepreneurial courses and stuff like that for children. Because I remember, like, I had kids. I had students that I used to buy CDs from. Remember how you burn CDs, you could make a mixtape and everything. This is when I forgot what the software was called. Napster and all this other stuff. And they showed me how to do it as well. So I had a skill set back then. I knew how to download the specific music. I used to go to a friend house and do everything, where legitimately they were making a profit in a business, because people will submit the songs they want and they'll like remix it however they do it in the soundtrack. I'm like, yo, this is a great opportunity for people to learn how to make money outside of, the just basic academia school field. But that's my tangent. I'm just saying it was
Well, I'll do this in their defense of the educational system, or even just any system. Even at my job, they don't really do like exchanges between employees. One, because an employee could short somebody else and it could become an internally contentious scenario, especially between kids. Like you don't know who said what said who. But on top of that is the quality control when it comes to food and the sale of anything. So if somebody gets sick, who's at fault now? Then the parents get really mad. They're not going to get mad at the kid. They're going to get mad at the school, the teachers, and so on and so forth. So because of it, they just wipe their hands of it.
That's food. I get that.
I
get that portion. But now we see,
we
see how tech it is now. The people that were really good in doing that could have had expand their skills and skill set, and that would have been a great opportunity to introduce children and students into coding, into other tech STEM fields if they want. I'm just saying it was a missed opportunity, something I learned to do over time because I had a friend that was downloading music, but I'm just saying I never liked the fact how they kind of like shut it down without really exploring those skill set for children that may be beneficial because
burning CDs was also illegal. But I'm just going back to Dami real quick.
You know what?
Like there's some SEC rules and stuff. Like it's some pretty illegal.
That's
stuff.
Why they shut down.
What I could say is that it did like the reason why I got suspended. I was doing a lot of buzz, of course, around the school, from all grades in the school. And so there's this one. So basically how it started was this girl, she had came to me and wanted to buy gushers. I was like, sure, I bought my products, the beginning of the day or late the day before, depending on my track practice or my schedule. And she had bought the gushers for whatever reason, she was on her cycle and she was like, the gusher was not hidden right. It was not the same taste for her at that day. So she had wanted a refund. I was like, nah, you can't get a refund because you already opened the product, you already ate it, I don't know what you did. You want me to take it back? I was like, nah, that's not going to happen. So she went to the assistant principal and they called me up to the school, to the office and like, we need to stop and you also need to suspend that as well.
So she snitched on you essentially.
Yeah. So that's how it went. They knew I was selling. They took my candy and they ate it eventually, all my snacks, and then they ate it in the office. So it was like I had about $50 worth of product in my bag, and it was just distributed.
Hey, I'm so salty about that, like because you remember specifically, like specifically remembers this stuff. It's some painful stuff. I'm not gonna lie.
Specifically, and just to go on to what Atlanta said, I think that schools, I understand your perspective in terms of control, making sure that no student gets sick. But I feel like, in school, they should, encourage kids to look outside of just being a regular, doctor, lawyer, because a lot of people, we have different skills, we have different talent. Just in the same way, I made a video recently that in this current economy, everybody's trying to become an entrepreneur, but being an entrepreneur requires a certain skill that not everybody has that skill. We still need lawyers, we still need doctors. I feel like whether it's school, wherever we find ourselves, I think we should expose ourselves that there's different ways we can go about reaching financial freedom.
That opens up a lot of questions too, especially how you kind of now on your path. Are you doing this full time, or are you just what's your career path right now? And are you doing the podcasting on the side, or are you kind of like doing that just full time?
So the podcast I do it full time. On a weekly basis, I put out a new podcast. I interview people almost at least every week for the most part, edited and clipped it myself. As well, I have where, I invest in the stock market on the side. I also do tutoring where, to help support my business and then as I'm growing, I attend conferences. I buy different like courses and things of that sort, like mentorship to help me. So this is something that I'm truly into 100%. So I don't have a typical 9-to-5 job. And I feel like if I did have a typical 9-to-5 job, it would be hard for me to be as consistent as I am in terms of producing content, in terms of, reaching out to guests, in terms of following up back with guests. And I feel like that's a skill that most people don't realize, that they just see that an entrepreneur in the next 5-10 years, they have $1 million or they have 1 million subscribers, and they think it's that easy. But there's certain skills you have to adapt to. There's a certain kind of person you have to become in order to attain that success that you want. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that.
Whoa. So you basically say you're full-time doing this. How do your parents take all this information? 'Cause I know you're Nigerian. So
yeah, Nigerian.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
You're not a doctor? Failure.
Oh, yeah, what ended up happening with that too? What was your journey from not going into medicine?
So the journey not going into medicine, like, I feel like what is entrepreneurship, what is any career, you need to have an honest conversation with yourself and realize, is this something you really want to do? Or is this something that you may have gotten inspired with as a child? You must have watched a TV episode or watched like a documentary like I did, Ben Carson, like, oh, this is something I can do. But I did not realize like the work ethic that it takes to becoming a doctor. I didn't realize like, the different type of courses, different type of chemistry equations I need to know. And I was not, in high school, science was easy, but college, taking organic chemistry, biochemistry, it definitely whipped my butt a bit. And it kind of discouraged me. And, I did have mentors and things, but I just felt like it was not for me, because the only reason I would have became a doctor or kept on going to passion, it was just the money. It was just like outside of, going into business or being an entrepreneur, because I didn't have mentors, like I mentioned, when I graduated high school. So just like the only thing I could think of, if you're not doing business or anything, it was just to go into just to go to college, do my 4-year degree, become a doctor, and all the money I'll make, I'll go invest into properties. I look at my vision board from years back. It's literally that, when I get to a certain stage of my medical career, I buy property, I will invest, I retire my parents. That was literally my goal. But, going through college and realize how much I was struggling and I was not enjoying the process, it made me question, this is something really for me. And I feel like that's what people need to understand themselves. Like, yes, you're going to go through struggles. Yes, you're going to go through challenges to become the person that you want to become, to reach that goal that you want to become. But are you enjoying that process? I feel like if you're enjoying that process, you'll be able to withstand days where things are not going well. You're able to withstand days where you don't feel like doing anything. So that's pretty much, and having a conversation with my parent was very tough to say. My mom was like, oh, why do you want to do this? Business is not, there's no guarantee that you can make it, but I'd rather do something and know that I at least try. A lot of people, especially in the, Nigerian African community or just in the Caribbean community, we like to just put ourselves in a box. Or this is all you can do. You can become a lawyer, engineer, doctor, nurse. It's all you can do to become successful. And you realize there's so many different talents that you have in you. Yes, you may be good at science, but it does not mean that you can make a good doctor. There's still more that goes to becoming a good doctor in terms of how you communicate with patients, in terms of how you relate information to patients. I feel like it was a hard conversation. And my mom, once she understood that, that was my mindset. This was something that I was going to do regardless. She didn't necessarily, whether she support me or not, I was going to do it. In regards to my pops, he was still on the fence on it. He still doesn't, to him, it's like he doesn't understand what I'm doing. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I'm still in the growing process. I haven't made any significant money from this. So that's pretty much a two different perspective. My mom's on board. She sees it. She supports me when she can. But my pops is like, why can't you just going to become a nurse or a doctor?
What did you graduate in college?
I graduated in biology. I graduated in the heights of the pandemic. So that was basically my whole thing, the pandemic. So 2020, I graduated.
He's young. He's like, I'm out here, man. College is a ways behind me.
It's like up. over 10 years for me.
Well, you say 10 years? Like, yo.
For me,
yeah,
not you.
Like, wow. We were there at the same time.
No. We wasn't.
Well, like we were there at the same time. Lovely. I know you've also kind of gone through the same situation with your parents. What do you think about his story? You think he survived for now?
I think the story will kind of like pan out depending on how successful he becomes. Either they're going to say, hey, you did a great job, congratulations, or they're going to say, I told you so. But I think if you have the drive to stay on the road, the path, and be willing to pivot, because I think that's what I'm hearing. Like I feel like you're coming into who you are. you know that the foundational, I want to be entrepreneurial, I'm doing these pieces. But I think as you continue on the road, you'll be able to clarify what does that mean for you. I think when we think about business ownership or entrepreneurial, like spirit, whatever you want to call it, we kind of see it only in one way. I think you're still tasting and seeing, okay, which of it is going to work. But the one thing I would encourage you to do as you're walking through this process is, like we had this conversation in the previous podcast, was be willing to pivot, right? So you're doing Wealth in Christ. Like, how do you monetize that? How do you serve a community consistently? And where are you also investing? I know you said you're doing like stock market. I think when you're tasting a lot of things at the same time, you're trying to figure out what your palate is and building out your skills. I think in the long run, as long as you are consistent and be willing to do those pivot as necessary, then you'll be fine. I think our parents are thinking about survival, right? Everything is really focused on, you need something that you're going to be able to eat. You need something that no matter what, and that's why they chose at the time, it was engineering, it was lawyer, it was doctor, because they knew that for the most part in those particular industries, you're going to get a job. You're going to find a place to work at. And even if, like, I know a couple of lawyers that don't practice law that are working and they make pretty decent money, because when you get the JD, by proxy, people just assume that you're smart. Like, it's one of those degrees, if you have it, even if you're like the dumbest one, I have met some people that I'm like, I know God is not good to call people dumb, but man, I'm telling you, like, they're not as astute as you would think, but they have the JD. So by proxy, our society rewards those that have certain degrees or certain status. I think what you're trying to tell your parents is like, you want to forge your own path. In forging your own path, you have to then figure out the level of discipline that it requires for forging your own path, because you can't fall back on, well, I got a JD, I can just walk into almost any company, and because I have that, they'll give me something to do. And so entrepreneurship, like if you put it on your resume, it's not something that pops out to people, because they're like, well, you're measuring yourself against yourself. Whereas, you know, our society rewards a particular structure. So I think parents are just going to have to kind of see it through and see your success and making sure that you're saying it, but you're actually doing the work. And I think by being here, it says that you're willing to do the work and share your story, which is a great start.
Yeah, I'll double down on that. I think it's interesting to see how people are deciding to themselves. And also, you have to stand in opposition with the people that you love sometimes in regards to what you want to pursue in life. And that's not a bad thing, because that's a challenge. Like, your dad presents that challenge. He's like, hey, do you really want it? Some people, when they're hit with that challenge, they back off, and the dad looks at them like, well, I guess, I guess you didn't really want this. But the fact that you're pursuing it more, and a lot of us have to make these decisions, even beyond our parents that might not see the same vision. They might not know where we're going. They still love you. They want to know, are you 100% committed to the game? I think that's probably what's most interesting about your vision of marrying up wealth and Christianity into one frame, because a lot of times growing up, I was always, Catholic in that sense, always taught that money was the root of all evil. That was like the words that just swirled around. And in some way that the poorer you are, the more pious you become for some reason. You're like, what? You have no money? Oh, you walk on ice. Like, you're the perfect person. How do you feel about these money myths that exist, especially as it kind of swirls around our spirituality and maybe what we've almost like internalized subconsciously from those messages that we thought that we heard at church?
That was definitely a great question, but I want to just tally back on what Lovely said and as well what you said in regards to my journey of entrepreneurship. One thing I do preach, as my journey, this is not something I've been just started. Like I said, I've been doing this from high school. And I would say to anybody, I said on any podcast or anything going, that entrepreneurship is not for everybody. There's certain skills, there's certain, dedication, there's certain discipline that you need to have, that most people are not willing to make that sacrifice. Most people are not willing to make a sacrifice, whether they can't go to the barbershop, they can't get their nails done for a certain amount of time. So I don't think entrepreneurship is for them. There's different ways you can reach this financial freedom, but you have to figure out, is this something you're going to do and how long you're going to stick with it? It's going to be 5 years, it's going to be 10 years. As you can probably tell, looking back at 2020, a lot of people started investing into the stock market. Now, looking back now, most of the people are not investing because they didn't understand that investing is a long-term thing. And a lot of people quit it. I have friends that have blue whale accounts, and they're not trading, they're not investing, everything's to them now sounds like a scam. But it's like me, it's like I'm still focused. I still see myself as the successful entrepreneur that keeps me going. I realize that success loves speed. Success is not overnight. The different things I do now, planting are seeds that are going to provide food for me in the near future as long as I continue to be consistent. So that's basically what I wanted to say to that. And in regards to your question, I feel like just growing up in the church, and still going to church, a lot of people shy away from the talk of money, unless it's about tithes, the first fruit, or given to the poor, that's the only time you will hear about money. And oftentimes, when people think about wealthy Christian, they only think about, musical artists, they think about pastors some of them may have scammed people to get this money, which is a different story. But they don't realize that, because of money, how we use money is the reason why Christianity is today. When you think about like the Bible, for example, the cost to print a Bible and to distribute it around the whole world, to keep that script going, to keep that book going, it costs money, to have like different channels or different ministries where people go in the name of Christ. So, preach the gospel, that costs money. It's not just somebody just like, oh, just go. You're a pastor, you're a minister, here's a free flight. I don't people realize like, in order for Christianity to continue to grow and continue to impact the world in an impactful way, you need to have money. Like one thing I recently said is that it's hard for me to go to anybody and say that my God is a God of abundance. My God owns the whole world. But if you need help, you need my help monetarily, whether it's me buying you lunch or buying you like a burger. And I'm just saying, oh, God bless you. God will provide for you. But I'm in a position, I have $20. Why can't I go and buy you a McDonald's or a Burger King and, and then tell you God is great. God is wonderful, and also I will say that a lot of people are not good stewards of their money. They don't want to take ownership of their money. They feel like, that God should just open the heavens and just bless them with money because of they are good people. And, you look at the different stories in the Bible, you talk about the story of the talents, he gave 1 5, he gave 1 2, and he gave 1 1. Those are 3 different people. The 5 duplicated his own and turned into 10. The 2 duplicated his own and turned into 4. The one that had 1, he thought like, why would God give me such a thing? He felt entitled. That's what a lot of people feel entitled that God should just bless them because we're so-called child of God. We're so-called woman and man of God, but that's not how life is. You have to basically going back to the word faith without action is dead. You have to match your work with your faith. And I feel like a lot of people are not doing that. Yes, we go to church, we go to these different revivals, prophecies and different things, but there's a certain ownership that you have to take, for that prophecy to come to pass, for that lifestyle that you desire to come to pass. You look at all the disciples, they all funded their own ministry. Oftentimes one of the scriptures that kind of like set me off on this journey, when I was reading the book of, I forgot what I was reading, but Paul, he was talking about how, despite how he must have given back to the Christian community, he had wrote a lot of books. He still, built tents on his own to fund his ministry. And if he was supposed to ask the church for something, why not? Like this book, he wrote like most of half of the book, but still he understands the principle of doing things for himself and understand the principle of, building, using his own work, his own hands to build for God's kingdom. Because it's a blessing when you're able to do something for yourself and you're not just feeling entitled that people should just give you something because of that.
Oh, he dropped the whole word out here. Lando shaking her head. Mm-hmm. He had the mouchoir on and everything. Mm-hmm. I think there's something you said here about the idea of working with our own tangible hands and how that's really changing in the digital world now. A lot of people aren't constructing anymore. We're not actually. Yeah, some people have faith, but I don't think we're out there anymore. Like we're not in the streets. We're not actually impacting. How do you move beyond just a digital footprint and actually really go back into the world and actually impact people on a day-to-day basis? Or I don't know, maybe it's just a question I want to ask. It's not a gotcha question. It's just more an idea that it seems like we're all digital and it's a little bit out there now.
If I understand your question clearly, I feel like in this digital space, right now we're on Zoom, we're recording, this podcast, this interview. This is a tool that we can use to push the gospel. We're talking about Christianity and finance, whether it's creating a clothing brand, that's another way you can monetize, you can impact people without being there physical. You can still have webinars, you can still do like coaching calls. You can help different people in their faith, in their finance journey. I feel like those are ways we can still impact the community. I feel like the church, a lot of churches have gotten on board. I read recently about 92% of churches, they live streaming the service online. So that's a good thing, but it's still 8% of people who are still stuck, they don't want to make that change. And I feel like as technology become more advanced and we get more digital and AI and ChatGPT, the church as a whole, we need to figure out how we can use these tools to continue to push the gospel.
Yeah, I always find that fascinating. Are we doing too much in the digital realm? Which I understand that we could proliferate the information as far and wide, or is it a feeling of being in the sanctuary that we're missing now, especially post-pandemic? Do you feel that are people really feeling it anymore? Or we're like, especially as we hear more and more millennials, Gen Z are becoming spiritual. So they're not really picking a specific denomination or where they're going to follow or who they're going to be in proximity with. Is that becoming problematic in in how we interpret the word? Or are people, are we not feeling it? Maybe it's crazy, but I kind of want Lovely say something about this. Like, what do you think?
I think you're right. It's becoming very problematic. I feel like, like I say, that pandemic exposed a lot of things, that wasn't necessarily, it was there, but it was always in the shadow. You never really thought about it. You never really considered other voices, other speakers, other religion. Like you go on TikTok, you will find Muslim preaching, you find a Christian person preaching, you will find a Jewish person preaching. You go on YouTube, like there's all this exposure that, because you was at home, you're able to, binge YouTube, you're able to search different questions. And I feel like the church, when people were in person, they was not answering some of these questions, some of these deep questions about spirituality. So as a result, a lot of these Gen Zs and millennials, during that time of COVID and up to right now, they find different speakers who relate to them, who's able to answer certain questions to them. It may be against the Bible, but because of that feeling of satisfaction, somebody made a video, somebody decided to create a course to help me, it creates that conflict now, because a lot of churches, like I said, 92% of churches are online, but still that 8% of churches are still not online. It creates still a conflict because some people are still stuck in the ways of this is how it has to be. This is how God told me to be. And they're not willing to use the tools that we have to spread the gospel.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that I think we are doing away from being at the edifice, which is like the location of church, and people are making those big changes. But I do have some concerns, because I do feel as if it's almost, there's something about being joined in a community. There's something about in person that makes a big difference. I think we need to maybe rechange it, like in terms of like priority, in terms of like, okay, only Sunday services. But there's something about in general, it's like the whole idea of like hybrid work, remote work, like not being in person completely. There's a connection that's not being made. There's work, there's certain high level problems. You're not going to be able to get the Zoom on them. It's just the reality of it. And there needs to be a meeting of the minds to come. We are social beings, like by proxy of who we are by nature, we're social beings. And I think we've tried to use social media and digital to fill it. And we're seeing suicide go up. We're seeing people be more emotionally burdened. And I think it speaks to the testament of like, this is supposed to be an add-on, not a replacement. This is supposed to be supplemental. It's like us taking our vitamins and saying that we're not going to no longer eat food because vitamins are good for us. And it's like, you actually need like nutrition and food. The vitamins are not a replacement of, they enhance your cells to make you better, but you should still be eating like real food. And so I think real food is in person. It doesn't necessarily need to be maybe you don't need that anymore. You could work remotely, but guess what? When you work remotely, if you're home with your spouse, you get to see them more. You're still getting some level of touch point or social interaction. I think it's just important for us not to do away with it, because I think if it was working for us, then we would be seeing more progress. But I think we're seeing a regression in how we are morally, how we are connecting with one another. I think certain principles like that esteem that we don't have, like, back in the day, like people wouldn't drive in front of their church with a certain music on. Like, let me turn it down. I'm going to listen to it, but I'm going to turn it down passing the church because, God. And not necessarily saying that it's great either, but then there was a little bit of a reverence. And because we had something to fall back on to socially, morality, certain things that were done were like a no-no in society. And now we're pretty much like trying to make certain things okay, when something naturally in us are like, something's not okay with that. Even if I'm not a religious person, something about that is not okay. Something in me is like, I think something is wrong. So I think we need to be careful with the digital evolution. I think people think like, oh, I'm going to just get an AI bot that's going to be my best friend and they're going to know everything to say to me. And we're going to recognize that it's supplemental. It's not supposed to replace. And I think as a society, I'm not going to be surprised in 10 years, there's a reboot of like movies again, going out again, because it's history circulates itself again. I think there's going to be a resurgence of us seeking out that touch to play, because you can't keep playing with a doll. You can't keep playing with your AI like they're a real person. Like you need real touch. That's just my 2 cents about it.
You definitely, there's something about it when you said it. I started remembering there's a feeling you do get in proximity with others, or even sometimes in the sanctuary itself where everybody's there and, the choir is going in, maybe the preacher is going a little too long, but there's a certain eye contact that you make with your neighbor next to you, the person in front of you, or while you watching it and really feeling in the moment that it's not just you anymore. And I think that's a human experience that we might be missing out on. To your point, Lovely, is like, it's interesting. It's supposed to be a supplement, but it's not working the way we thought it was. So it's going to be interesting to see how we progress in the next 5, 10, even 20 years down the line, because people aren't going to church the same. And I don't think they're getting the same feeling, because, you could, you at church, but you're going to go make coffee. You're probably cleaning the floor. You're listening to stuff online. You're doing the dishes. You're not 100% as focused as you used to be. And I think that's part of the journey, especially when considering like your spirituality or even your wealth journey. You got to be focused on it. You got to actually commit to it. So I do love your perspective of just completely jumping into the podcast space, the digital creation space, and being almost like bridging the gap between wealth and Christianity, because a lot of people aren't as cavalier to jump in. And especially with the challenges of being African immigrant, or even like Caribbean, like we are, like, hey, if we decide to say, hey, I'm gonna go do podcasts all day, my mom would look at me sideways. Like, or Alanda, your mom would probably just go crazy. Maybe.
She's like, how much money does it make?
So it's always interesting that we have to create these paths and we have to push forward. So I'm happy that you're doing that. And I'm happy that you're seeing the trends and trying to implement them in a way that could actually help us, all of us.
And just to add on to what Lovely said, I think it's definitely important in terms of community. But I feel like just going back to what I said this first statement in terms of the pandemic, I feel like the pandemic exposed a lot of things. If you did go to church and you wasn't feeling that, closeness, or that, oh, this is my brother, this is my sister, it didn't make a difference whether when you went on Zoom, it's just a change. So as a result, like, I feel like people just like, okay, I'm still getting the same feeling on Zoom. I might just stay on Zoom instead of going in person and feeling that same thing. Because just to get ready, you have to take a shower, you have to brush your teeth, you have to get dressed, you got to put on the best cologne, you go to church.
I would hope that everybody still brushes their teeth in the morning, guys. Just put that a disclaimer for everybody.
What?
Hey, I know what you meant. I just wanted to say that for the people listening. Like, you don't brush your teeth out in these streets, guys. Like, do it.
So it's like just to see that, for a lot of people, that change is still there. Like, they still feel that emptiness. Like Lovely said, suicide's an all-time high. I just feel like, a lot of people are seeing this new AI, this new technology as a replacement, because they still getting the same feeling as they would have gotten if they did went into a community, or they was a so-called part of the community. Like I was watching this video recently about this member, and basically she left the church. And the reason why she left the church is not like military. She loved the people, but she didn't feel like she belongs there. Like there's a difference when you belong there and just being there. You know, there's a lot of different groups, you know, what is Facebook group. There's a difference when you're like, oh, this person actually sees me. This leader actually sees me, or this brother actually sees me. They actually check on me. You know, a lot of people went during the pandemic without hearing from anybody for 6 months, 9 months. And that does a lot to your brain psychology. You know, it's like, okay, if I can deal with you for not talking to you for 9 months, I don't need you now when, you know, things are open back up. There's friends that I haven't spoken to since the pandemic because it's like, was not benefiting me then, and you won't, I don't know if you can benefit me now, you know, once everything's open back up. So that's how I look at it. And while a lot of people are still not, you know, willing to come back to church because that connection, that community, like I belong there, you know, you see me, you know, you value me being there. The church is still, some churches are missing that component.
I think we kind of undermine when it comes to social norms. And I guess the emphasis is on social, where we have to be out and talking to people, communicating to people within our communities or different groups. And like Lovely said, I still remember that same person blasting their music coming into church, or everyone give you that look because you know you're not supposed to do it and you're still doing it, or potentially talking about something happened at church, or someone is doing something I'm supposed to do. Like it's all these small social norms. Or even every Sunday, because I used to go to church with my godmom when I was younger, I was always late. And guess what? Church was right across the street from me. She was always wondering why I'm late for Bible study, but I was always late. It was those things. I was late because I was trying to get that pate from the bakery. That's why I was late all the time. But these social nuances and things that you remember, and it's like a collective experience and a memory for you. And these are small things like you kind of gather in your memory bank, and kind of like this refreshing memory for you when you're doing these things, and how it kind of set up your day and set up the tone of your mood, because you can wake up and feel really groggy or something happened the previous day. And, you know, at the Haitian bakery, before you go into your Bible study, you know, you had a great conversation with one of the other kids from school, or you seen something that kind of like brought up your spirits. I remember all those nuances, or just praying that my mom give me $1 so I can make sure I have money for the candy lady after church, right? I remember all those small things, and we miss those components as we getting more advanced into technology and replacing those social norms with digital spaces. And we can't continuously do that because you miss a human experience when it comes to those things.
And that Haitian, the candy lady at the church also got suspended, just to let y'all know. Like at some point, everybody gets suspended.
To this day, she never understood why I was late. Like I was always in trouble.
Nah, but I think there's something there about the way that we've changed. It's something that you brought in, Dami, like the idea that the people that you used to communicate with prior to the pandemic are probably not the same people you still communicate with after the pandemic. So it's actually very odd. And I have to start thinking about like, hey, I have to think really deeply, all the communications, all the people I used to run into, and what did that mean? And how did either they abandoned me or I abandoned them, or maybe we never had a strong enough connection to ever begin with. And your point is well taken, especially for church. People had to put on the face, the outfit, the look. I remember a lot of churches, you gotta get in the suit to get in there. Like you didn't have to be in the suit, but you kind of had to be in the suit. It's kind of one of those things. So it forces people that are naturally, maybe they don't even have a suit. Naturally, they're looking around like, I don't fit in anymore. And especially for people like that, like I could see why they kind of move away, especially in the situation where we have a pandemic and you don't have to go back in the space where you feel so uncomfortable, or maybe not acknowledged, or maybe not in proximity to the person right next to you. So it's a lot of interesting ideas here. But how have you been, I guess, doing your ministry on a week-to-week basis? How have you kind of been reaching out to different people and kind of helping them helping them along the way with their path?
I would say it has been a great challenge, starting this journey. Like, it has been, whether you look at it from the church people or just, like you mentioned, being African American, it's like those two different sides. Like, you never know what either one of these sides is going to say. Like, oh, why are you talking about this? With regards to the African American, is like this victim mindset. Why do you think that you can just go and get money? You can just get into the stocks. You should get mentors and all these different things. And in regards to the church, some people are still in this mindset that, oh, having money is evil, and it's like, okay, where do you draw this line between these two different kind of people, and how do you like show them that yes, the Bible says money is the root of all evil, but the love of money is the root of all evil. But that does not mean that money is wrong. And as an African American, to address is like, just because I'm a Black, yes, I live in America, yes, we deal with racism, yes, we deal with certain challenges, but that shouldn't limit you as a person and wanting to see yourself financially educated, having financial freedom. So it's a struggle, because some people take the message wrong. Some people feel like, why are you even doing this? I have gotten some interesting messages on YouTube and TikTok, and I just kind of ignore it. Like, you just keep on going. 'Cause I feel like it's something that needs to be talking about, because there's some churches that do preach this same message, and, their audience, their members are growing in wealth. They're, reaching different milestones financially. And there's certain people, African Americans, who have, stopped looking at themselves as a victim, and they scaling through the ranks. They reaching things that their own parents would never think that they will. So I feel like it go back to the mindset. Like, I always have to deal with people's mindset, like understand what people's mindset is. And sometimes I just don't deal with it, because I just realize that I can't help somebody if their mindset is in a certain place. If they have this victim mindset, or they have this, oh, God said I can't do this, or this limited mindset, I can't help either person. Unless they have this abundance mindset, they see themselves as victors. They see themselves like, oh, I can do this, Dami. God has called me to doing something great. God has called me to use my money to do great things. So those are the different challenges that I face reaching out to people on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, I find that actually always kind of funny, ironic funny, not funny in a sad way, really. But the idea that Blackness and as well as Christianity, it swirls together. So a lot of Black people are very spiritual. We've always been spiritual. We've always been in the church. We've always done the best we can, but we're mixing both of those ideologies, either the victim mindset or even the limited belief mindset, and both of them are swirling together. And whereas even in church, even in the Bible, there's multiple references of you being a champion, of you stepping up, of you kind of seeing yourself in a light that is, of God himself. So I'm never been one to quote scripture. I've never been good at that, but I've always been good at the stories and what they said to me. And it was never one that I'm limited in my capabilities. I'm basically as limitless as I allow myself to be. And if I pray for it, if I actually, I guess, commune or meditate and even like really understand what God gives me on the internal level, as far as my own talents, my own ambitions, or even my own skill set, and also realize that majority of that is really by proxy, things that he's using through me to help other people. So if I'm limiting myself, I'm literally limiting the reach and scope that he has for the world. So I always try to tell people, like, you can't set yourself in that mindset of, yeah, you can't do this, can't do that, or it cannot be done. Like, you have to consider yourself as a victor and a champion. And you kind of say to yourself, like, maybe it can be done, and maybe I need to try. And I think that's what we need to impart in the community at all points. And I've seen it too. I've reached a lot of people that just didn't want to do it. And we talked about it earlier, Atlanta. Like, you can't drag somebody that doesn't want to actually see themselves as winners anymore.
I think it's really interesting to say that scripture can be used for different ways. Scripture can be used to do good. Scripture can be used to manipulate. Scripture can be used to encourage and inspire. I think our job, especially if you're a Christian, if you're listening, is not to impose, but to showcase, to let people see I think the one thing that Christ did so well was that he kept saying that, like, I'm not here to change this. I'm here to build a whole different kingdom that's not even related to this. And you're going to see the kingdom come. You're going to see healing be manifested. You're going to see that the way of God is better than the way of the world. And he spent less time talking about it. If you notice, most of the time that he was speaking was because somebody asked him a question. And they were asking him a question because of the way he was living. So the foundation of it was how he executed his expression of living. And so it's like, why are you healing on the Sabbath? And then he would go into this rant and he would say X, Y, Z. Well, why are you doing that? And then he would say, well, da, da, da. It was rarely that you ever saw Jesus start talking without being asked a question. And the questions was often asked because people saw how he lived. And I think the reason why people in the Christian community have a very much big problem with financial wealth is located in the pulpit. So, and the way I say that it's located in the pulpit is if there is a level of prosperity in the church, it's only for the pastor. Like you'll see that the pastor is living this life and says, well, maybe one day God can trickle you down. Like it's going to just trickle down from the head. Whereas Jesus removed himself from the state of being a high priest or a king and lived among the people to show them what it was to walk out wealth, what it was to walk out. He even said, don't even worry about tomorrow because today has a specific provision. Here's the thing about having a specific provision. If you have $1,000, right? God bless you to have a job and you have $1,000 and you blow out the 1,000 that day one, God's going to say, what was the provision for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday? Because I gave you the 1,000. Provision for the day also lets me know that every day should have an allocation of provision. Every week, like it's so good. Like if you really read the word the way you're supposed to read it with revelation, even in him saying that every day has its own provision and every day has daily bread, it's also talking about budgeting what I've given you, stewarding what I've given you for the time and not overextending yourself. It's so much knowledge and so much good, but you have to be able to see it. Like I can tell somebody to go to Lawrence because I've seen his evolution. I can say like, yeah, I know in 2012, and I know he's here in 2022, he's about to hit 1 million network really, really soon around the corner because I've watched that happen over time. So I'm not questioning. I don't have to go pray for discernment about it because I can see it. And I think we're just in a generation where we need to reframe it from a conversational point to a place that people can see it in our lives. Like people can see that, no, something's different about the way you execute. Like you're going to Portugal and you're traveling like 12 countries and like every year. No, there's something different that you're doing. Or, hey, Elena, you're increasing your experience at your job. What are you doing differently? What work ethic are you presenting that these opportunities are coming from you to you? So I think there's something powerful about the word of God actually being something that people can see. And that the power of God can be something that people can see. And I think people are tired of the Christianity where we say a lot of things and there's no evidence of it. Because I don't know about you, but I believe God speaks and he shows and he walks. But if you never see that, then it becomes fallacy. It becomes not real. It becomes Santa Claus. Because ain't nobody come down my chimney. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I completely agree with you, Lovely. I think I agree with you 100%. When you look at a lot of people, the only time they see a wealthy person, especially in the Christian space, is like a TD Jake. They see his daughter. They see a Michael Todd. They may see a rapper or things, but they never see anyone outside in their own circles, their own people that they go to church with on a regular basis that actually, act out, these different principles that, that are in the Bible. So I feel like that's very important for people to actually see in their circles, in their community that, this is how you can apply these different principles. And, I think that will help change this conversation.
Wow. Oh, that was a whole bunch. It got me thinking about what I need to do to just actively live out my life. I think that's always going to be the end goal. The more that you pursue the better version of yourself, the more other people can see it. And you can also become an example for the type of lifestyle, the type of Christian, the type of person that somebody else would like to be or like to want to be. The reason I even said that to Atlanta earlier, I said it to my wife, it's never really about the dollars for me or the money, as much more I just want to be free from the system so I could go do something else and help out other people. I want to be in a position one day to, like walk in the cafe and say, you know what? I want to renovate this cafe, not because I want to make money out of it, because I see the good people and the good works that they're doing, and I want them to be happier. I want to also provide more for the community. So why not renovate that place? Or, hey, you see a couple kids in the street that really would need more money, spent to them on education. Why not put that into the world? Or opportunities for them to actually change their lives and change their families. So I think those are the things that could tangibly change the world, put food on the table, and just put more happy, healthier people in the game per se, so they can also multiply that aspect outside to other people as well. So that's what I want to do. And that's why I want to be financially free. And I'm happy to, personally, because I know we're coming out on that hour time, I'm happy to have listened to you, Damien, your stories, especially coming from a ruffian that was selling candy in the schools to somebody that's really pursuing their dreams and really changing the world in a way that might not be always as palatable as to the next person, but it's something that you're constructing for yourself. And I think that's probably the most important, valuable lesson for me. It's like you're unafraid, and being unafraid, I think that's the path. I guess the last question, at least I'd ask for you, like, who inspired you as far as like a financial other person? Was it a book? Was it what inspired you to go down this path? Like, what was it? Was it a person that came out of nowhere and said, you know what, this is what I'm going to do?
I wouldn't say like anyone necessarily inspired me, because, growing up looking for like a mentor or like a guide, and I myself wasn't someone that was always reading the Bible as consistently. I felt like that's a mistake a lot of Christian makes nowadays. We only listen to the pastors or listen to whoever's speaking on the TV or YouTube channel, but we never go back to actually verify what they're saying, verify if this what they're saying is true. Look at the fruit that they produce, and going back to Lovely saying, like, the way they live their life, is this something that I would want to do? And just growing up, I never really see any Christian entrepreneur who was out there. I guess also has to do with social media, because social media, we glorify a lot of different things. We glorify these hip hop artists. We glorify other people, like, quote unquote, not Christians for the most part. They reach a certain success and then they talking about God. But for me, it was like really no one. I've heard of Dave Ramsey. He does share some Christian belief, but it's not something that he does like consistently. Here and there he may throw a scripture or two where he may post it and talk about his journey, but it's not a consistent thing where he's talking about, how to literally take the principles from the Bible and actually live it out. So I can't really point. I just take a lot of inspiration from a lot of different people. I read a lot of different books. I read a lot of Bible myself, and just continue to learn. That's literally what it is. Continue to remain a student at this game of life.
Well said. Well said. I guess another question would be, anybody else has any other questions? That's the first thing. So Atlanta went really deep, but where can everybody find you? Find your podcast, find, what you're up to, or even find, some of your clothing brand, how you're selling it, and those options for them.
For anyone that wants to stay in touch with me, you can follow me on all social media platforms at Wealth in Christ. That's on YouTube, that's on TikTok, that's on Instagram. And for me personally, also my website is wealthinchristbrand.com, where you can buy merch there if you want to. So that's pretty much where everybody can find me.
And that's a dope name though. Like, think about it, like you slow it down. Wealth in Christ is so easy. My stuff is so complicated. But Wealth in Christ is easy to find, is easy to get into, and definitely give them a like, share, follow, subscribe. As always, for all the YouTubers, like unlike Atlanta, who hasn't YouTube in years. So you can find me at the Neighborhood Finance Guy. You see it's a very long title. It's not Wealth in Christ, because that's easy to find. Wealth in Christ brand. I'm the neighborhoodfinanceguy.com. You can find me on all social medias, where I just kind of love to have this conversation about personal finance in different facets. Where can they find you, Atlanta?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dami, for being on the TFG podcast. Really appreciate it. It was a great conversation, discussion about your platform and your perspective on money and relates to religion and God. You can find me on the IG streets at Atlanta_Ellison, YouTube as well, and Pinterest. I'm really going to try to push this Pinterest thing. It's pretty cool. So yeah, you can find me there. What about you, Lovely?
You can find me at Lovely Mardellas everywhere. Dami, it was really nice to meet you. I hope the best for you in your journey. I would love for us to kind of like a year from now do a resurgent episode to see your progress, especially that I know that you're putting like the bricks down. We would love to have you again just to see what progress have you made, what were the lessons that you learned, and how you can share it with other people.
Dope. I like it. With that being said, this has been another beautiful episode of the Neighborhood Finance Guy, where we have guests come on, share their stories, share their perspective, and their thoughts about what's going on in their life and how it could impact you as well. For me, I definitely learned the fact of like, you got to go out there, you have to determine yourself, you have to meditate and really commit to your purpose and see what you're really good at. Because it might be something that really changes your life and changes a lot of people's lives as well. So commit to those talents and invest them, multiply them, and grow them throughout the audiences. So with that being said, the Financial Griot, we out. I actually messed it up. I was going to say the name of the finance guy. I'm like, ooh, TFG, we out.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Griot podcast, powered by the Wealth Builders Collective.